All right, the betting line for Texas and Georgia is out, and it's moved. So coming into the weekend, Georgia was about a 1.5 favorite to beat Texas. We've seen moves now in a lot of these championship games. SMU, Clemson was favored. Now they're not. Georgia was favored. Texas is now favored by 1.5, and that's Saturday night. We'll see how it goes. And then the quick money went on the Longhorns. I understand it. I think it makes sense to me that Texas would be favored. I think this is basically a coin flip game. And, Texas is going to have their hands full playing in Atlanta. And Georgia's going to have his hands full playing Texas. I mean, I don't think there are three better teams better than these two teams. I think these are the two of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country. And, I think Notre Dame is playing really well. I think tonight was not great against USC. Texas was clearly the better team against Texas A&M. But they made some game-changing errors. A pick 6, a blocked punt. A&M held Texas down pretty good. And it's going to be a crowd not exactly like that. It'll probably be 70-30 Georgia. I don't think it'll be worse than that. And the ticket values just skyrocketed because Georgia is playing Texas. But, Georgia's going to have their hands full. They're going to have to figure out how to be as physical as they were on the offensive side of the ball, too. It's not going to just be good enough to expect Jalen Walker, Dan Jackson, Malachi Starks, etc. to go out there and blister people. I mean, the offense is going to have to create some points here too. And, Texas had a hard time scoring against Georgia. And now it looks like one of their best offensive linemen probably won't play in the game. Both teams are banged up. Quinn Ewers played really well tonight, I thought, for his condition. It was, he's got a freaking boot on, except they've wrapped it up. That was an amazing look, and he was pretty mobile with that thing. So, I thought, my immediate reaction is that Texas is probably going to win the game. But I don't know what, I don't know what these injury situations are. Georgia was really banged up going into Tech on the offensive line. Monroe Freeling did not practice a lot. Ernest Green has not played lately because they're trying to get him right. I think Jared Wilson got banged up in Tech during the Tech game. And I think did Kirby say Dylan Fairchild? I can't remember. But 2 of the 5 starters didn't have full reps this week. And I'm not talking about Ernest Green. So it's, I don't think ETN is going to play in this game. I don't know. But I think for both, let me step back here. First of all, great for Texas getting to Atlanta. Their best win was the win tonight. That was their best league win. I think their second best league win was probably Vanderbilt, I would imagine, or maybe Florida, to be honest with you. So, they've not played the, schedule that Georgia has. However, they are, tested. I don't think you can say Texas isn't tested after the win over A&M. Hey, make sure you're checking out our newsletter right down below. You're really missing out on what tens of thousands of people are getting about 5 times a week, usually 5 times a week. When we send out all our stuff, you can hit us up on social media too, but the newsletter goes straight to your email. You don't miss that. Like social, we don't control that stuff. We put it out there, but we can't control what the algorithms show y'all. The emails you get, it's worth it. It's free. So go ahead and sign up. That link's down below. But I think 1.5's right. I think the game is a toss-up. I think that, Georgia would rather played A&M, but A&M's not as good as Texas, clearly. And, for Georgia, they're going to get off on being the underdog again. This is what they do. And for both teams, stepping back 40,000 foot, this is not a terminal game for either team. You'd rather win. But I got to say, I think at this stage, the loser of this game probably hosts. Question is, who do they host? I don't know the answer to that. Could be Indiana, could be Ohio State, could be the Big 12 champion, could be, Tennessee. I really don't know. Tuesday's rankings show is going to tell you all you need to know, because they're not going to be able to do a lot of shuffling after me. Like if say Alabama is at 12, well, they're not in the playoff because they're going to get bumped by the Big 12 champion. I mean, so whoever's at 12, they're not going to make it in, because like unless I'm missing something, like Indiana, they're done. Notre Dame, they're done. Ohio State, they're done, and they're probably in. Okay, Tennessee, they're in. So there's 4 right there. You got your 5 champions. That's 9. I'm forgetting somebody. Let's just say this out loud again. So the loser of the Big Ten, the loser of the SEC. Okay, and then I won't name the champions. So forget Texas, forget Georgia, and forget. I'd be very curious to see Penn State and Oregon. Just forget them all. So those 2, and then you've got Indiana, you've got Ohio State, you've got Notre Dame, you've got Tennessee. That means you got 1 spot left for the at-larges. That's it. And I don't know if Miami's going to fall far enough to just be straight up. I don't know if that's going to happen, man. I don't know. I mean, the shame of it is if you're Clemson, and Clemson could steal it. Like if Clemson wins, I mean, SMU's in. But I'm just assuming they win the championship. But that game is a coin flip. I mean, SMU's a 1.5 favorite. But Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss. I think a lot of people would not like to play Alabama or South Carolina. But can you really justify, in Alabama's case, like I think, Alabama beat Carolina. Ole Miss beat Carolina. Ole Miss beat the shit out of Carolina. Carolina may have a better resume because their losses are to Ole Miss, Ole Miss, Alabama, and I can't remember who their third loss is to. Alabama's losses are to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Now, on the road to Tennessee, ain't nobody talking about that. But, I mean, Vanderbilt is 6-6. I think Oklahoma's 6-6. That it's hard to justify putting you in with 2 6 losses to 6-6 teams. So I mean, like, again, let's say Georgia loses the SEC championship. You got Georgia. Let's see, Penn State loses it. Penn State, so Georgia, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, Notre Dame, and I keep forgetting people. I should have a sheet of paper here, but it's just, and I didn't. It's hard to justify the other teams being in there. I'm not sure they will get in. I mean, the Big 12 is freaking out right now for sure. And you're going to have 4 Big Tens in this thing. You're going to have 3 SECs, possibly 4, but I doubt it. So that's 7 right there. You have 1 ACC, possibly 2. You're definitely only going to have 1 Big 12, and then you're going to have the Mountain West, and you're going to have Notre Dame, and and you just sort of, the thing about the Texas-Georgia game is this: if you are these 2 teams, you're playing again, whether you win this game or you lose it. The certainty, it's possible. It's possible. I don't know. It's possible that if you get the right draw, that you're still in really good shape. Like as the loser of this game, if you're the 6th seed or if you're the 5, I think the 5's going to be Notre Dame. I got to say at this stage, and so I think the question is, will Penn State be the 6, or would Georgia be the 6, or Texas? Like Texas would probably go over Penn State. I don't know. So being the 6 and you're going up against the ACC champion or the Big 12 champion, probably the ACC champion, man, that'd be pretty good, right? I mean, you'd be okay with that. But like for Georgia, they got to play better on the offensive line against Texas. Texas is a really good defense. Like you're not just going to – and then Carson didn't play well against Texas. It's one of the 3 games he had multiple turnovers in the game. But he's playing better than he did back then. He didn't have the offensive line that he's had lately. I mean, against Tech, they protected him pretty well. I know it's slightly inflated because of the overtime, but Georgia did score 40 points the other night. I would say it was probably a legitimate 30-ish points. But they protected him pretty well. And they scored 4 touchdowns in a row in the second half of that game. And then 2 more at the end after in overtime. So I think Carson's playing well. He's got to have production from the running backs. Nate Frazier cannot fumble the ball. Guys like Arian Smith. Listen, forget Arian. The wide receivers got to play better. They got to catch the ball. I don't really know what else there is to say about it. The tight ends are doing their part. Tight ends are playing pretty well. Wide receivers are not. And Carson doesn't. I mean, Carson will be all right. He knows how to play. He's dealt with these guys. And, it's time for the receivers to be what they have the capability of being. If you beat Texas, I mean, you're not winning the national championship. That's the problem. I mean, you're not just going to the semifinals. You're just in the quarters. That's it. And you're going to have a win. You're going to have to play a team that's probably pretty good at that stage. Probably. The problem is we don't know what the brackets are, right? So it's hard to talk about Texas, Georgia, and the ramifications of it without knowing that. Going into this game, Georgia didn't play great against Tech, but they were extremely resilient. Texas, you can say the same thing about Texas A&M. They held A&M off. Georgia had to surge past Tech. Texas, they narrowly deserved. I mean, that was pretty close to being a damn disaster against the Aggies. But they did what they do, which is they beat Texas A&M and they move on about their season. Texas A&M was a good season, but it really wasn't a lot different than anything else. And I hate to be harsh, but you're 8-4. You lost to Texas. I mean, what was all the hubbub about? I mean, really. I mean, I don't mean that bad. You lost to Notre Dame, who's a good team. You lost to Texas, who's a good team. You got just drilled by South Carolina, who was also a good team. And I cannot recall the other loss for A&M. It will come to mind at some point. But, I mean, 8-4 is kind of what A&M has been. This is a better looking 8-4. So there's that. Texas didn't go through what Georgia did in the league. Texas didn't play at Alabama. They didn't play at Ole Miss. They certainly didn't play at Georgia. But they did play at Texas A&M. And they did play. I mean, I'm not really being facetious here, but they did play at Vanderbilt. They had a hard time in that game. They had a hard time with Kentucky. I mean, Texas is not unbeatable. They played well tonight. They played well enough tonight. They ran the ball effectively. I think the running back is pretty good. Georgia limited him. But Georgia's defensive line, they've not looked like that for a while. They've not. Not these last 2 games, that's for sure. I mean, they're missing Christian Miller. There's, Mikael Williams, it's go time, right? I mean, there's not a lot more dances in silver britches for some of these guys. It is go time. Chaz Chambliss is flashing more than Mikael Williams lately. I mean, I don't know if that's just because he fell on the ball the other night or because he's leading the team in sacks, I think, or he was, but and maybe that's not what Mikael Williams' role is. And I'm not trying to trash Mikael at all. That's not what this is. What I'm saying is, that guy's a star, and it's time to be a star. Right now is the time to be stars, not hero ball, stars. If you have gap protection, if that's what you're dealing with, then let's not go too far up the field. Do what you're supposed to do, and that's it. And the plays will happen. And there are some really good players on Georgia's defense. Williams, Walker, Ingram Dawkins has had a good season, but the transfers that have come in, McLeod, those guys, they need those guys now. I don't know what Christian Miller's status is, but Smile Munden, Dan Jackson, All these guys, it's all there now. And Texas has a really good quarterback who is, like every other quarterback in the SEC, prone to mistakes and can do things. So this is going to be a tough game for Georgia, but this is going to be a tough game for Texas too. They are usually in a situation where they've got the crowd. They almost certainly will not have the crowd in the SEC championship game. They could make it competitive, but there won't be more burnt orange than red. It's Atlanta. That'd be like saying in Dallas, Atlanta would have more people, Georgia would have more people. That's not happening. But you got to have your quarterback play well. He did not play well the last time they played Texas. It was kind of one of the few reasons why Texas was hanging in there. You got to have. They're going to have to play physical, and Texas is going to be all pissed off because the last time. The challenge for both these teams is, can Texas go into this game, and maybe he will play without their best offensive lineman and figure it out. That would not be ideal. Secondly, is Georgia going to handle their injuries? Is ETN going to play before the December, before the playoff? I don't know. And by the way, this is not me talking bad about these guys. I'm asking these questions. I don't know the answer to that. So it's not me challenging guys or anything like that. Don't get that impression. So I don't know. I don't know about ETN. ETN would make a huge difference right now. You saw with Roderick Robinson, man, they made a huge difference for Georgia, him being out there and playing. So there's a lot on the line, obviously. But this Georgia team, man, they've got everything they need to win the conference and win the national championship. What they're not doing is consistently doing those things. And, they're not going to. I'm not going to be that person that sits here and lies to you. They're not going to be consistent from here on out unless the personnel changes. Now, can the personnel change? It can be tweaked. The offensive line was tweaked and it got better. Well, this week, you had guys out during practice. That's not good. You got to practice. Is ETN going to come back? Is Branson Robinson going to come back? You're going to get Christian Miller back. A lot of it is keep that. But these guys, the way they've won or lost, you should any of those variables are possible because we simply cannot trust any football team in America. We cannot trust Oregon. We can't trust Georgia. We cannot certainly trust Ohio State. We cannot trust Penn State with their 1-point win over Minnesota. Is that as bad as a 2-point win over Tech? Is Indiana's... what you want, I think, is to somehow end up with teams that are physical like Indiana, but they don't have the skill maybe that Georgia has. That would be, this has not been a great look to me for the Big Ten. The third best team in the Big Ten, Ohio State, was completely trounced by a mid-level team in Michigan, a team that Texas destroyed on their home field. You look at Wisconsin and Alabama, destruction. These games were not close. And, and then it's just bad look. This is not the best way to look at the SEC and the ACC. The SEC is clearly the best conference. But, you had Georgia beat Tech. You had Carolina beat Clemson. You had Florida beat the Gators. The Gators beat the Noles. In all cases, the Carolina game was an upset, but in all cases, the SEC team was the better team. They probably should have won. Now we're going to see with, probably the three SEC schools being Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia. It is very possible that, first of all three make it to the quarters. It is not out of the realm of possibility that all three are in the semis. They probably won't be. But to expect Georgia to be something they're not is a mistake on your part. These guys are not anything other than they've shown the whole time. They have the capability of absolutely destroying people like they did against Texas and hanging on like they did against Tech. Or losing like they did against Ole Miss. Or like the sort of dilly-dallying wins like they had over, to some degree Clemson, but like Mississippi State, stuff like that. Those are all, and Texas struggled with Mississippi State. Texas is good. They're not like unbeatable by any stretch of the imagination. Georgia can win this game. They maybe should win this game. I need to look at it a little bit more, but it's basically a toss-up game. This should come down to the fourth quarter, and we'll just see what happens. Hopefully, it won't. You won't see people throwing stuff on the field. This season has been, Ryan was talking about it the other day. This season has been something else. Just for Georgia alone, you think about, the win at Kentucky was one thing, but that was a tight, narrow win. I can feel myself getting a cold now. That was a tight, narrow win. And then you have the game against Alabama, which was a whole mess, before the game with Trump being there, and then the game itself, which was insanity. And, that entire experience was just bad. And Alabama, as a university, didn't do a great job on that whole thing, on a lot of levels, almost every level. And then, then you get to the usual, then you got to play Auburn, then you got to play the Gators. It's been a lot. I skipped the Texas game where people were throwing stuff onto the field. Georgia's had a long journey to this moment, and they have earned this moment by their play, inconsistent as it has been. They have the capability to win their, I believe it's 15th Southeastern Conference Championship on Saturday afternoon. Texas can win their first. And we will see what happens from there. This is a big game. And Georgia's played a lot of them this season. And they've won more than they've lost in that category. The rematch of SEC championship games of teams who've played in the regular season is 5-2 for the team that won it the first time. Georgia knows what that's like. I mean, they lost to LSU in 2003. So it happens. But, Georgia, this is a great opportunity to play back again in the Dome, second time this season. If they play in there 3 times, they in theory, they could play at the Dome 4 times this season. That's still in play. But that involves losing at least once. But, the loser of this game is not at all in dire straits. I just want to say that out loud. You'd much rather win, but I have to be honest here. Both these teams are relatively inconsistent. Texas more consistent than Georgia, but they've not played what Georgia's dealt with either. I mean, they've not played Tennessee. They've not played Alabama. They've not played Ole Miss. They didn't play Clemson. So there's a lot. When they played Florida, they didn't have their quarter. I mean, it was a whole mess during that time. But an important game for Georgia. Anytime you can lift a trophy or raise banners, those are big deal games. Hey, thanks for watching.